Hi, everybody. 4:03, and I wanna respect you guys who are here on time, so let's give it till 4:05 to start, if that's okay. Hi, everybody. I almost said good evening because it's so dark, but good afternoon. And thank you for being at the November CAG meeting. I am going to turn it over to Desiree.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay, Paula, can you give me a thumbs up?
Yep, yep.
Thank you. All right, wonderful. So good afternoon. Once again, I am Desiree Gazzo from H&T Bulero, the PMCM for the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of TDC, the Department of Design and Construction. With us in the room, we have some of our sister agencies, and we're looking forward to this presentation for meeting number 51. I think just going through the focus area topics, of course, we will discuss the construction progress. We have the environmental update for PA1, a little bit of hiring compliance and community programming and coordination that we'll start with. We'll also go over the phasing update um, that was presented by Ethan at CB3. So if anyone has any further questions on that, we'd be happy to talk about it. And we've already received a couple of questions that we've responded to, and then we'll have what we've heard update in there as well. So starting with the Work With Us upcoming events, ESCR will hold its next quarterly information center on December 10th, or information session, excuse me. This will be a virtual information session. I think in the warmer weather, though it is relatively warm now, we hold the in-person events, and then in the winter we usually do virtual. So for this event, we are partnering with St. Nick's Alliance, and it is to learn about construction training programs, cost-free resources, and how to get more experience, etc. So the registration link is there. The QR code, if you're just viewing the screen, you could hold up your phones and click on the QR code. And it's also posted on the website. DDC is also holding its next construction career and training resource fair here in Manhattan. In the past, I think we've had one in Brooklyn, in I think the Bronx and Queens. So this one is in Manhattan, and it's down at One Bowling Green at the National Museum of the American Indian. There are two sessions on Wednesday, December 4th. Session 1 is from 10 to 12, and session 2 is from 1 to 3. So our project will be having a table there. And they usually have a really great turnout. So please, if you can, spread the word. We'd love to see some familiar faces there as well. And then just a few other items from folks that we partner with. Henry Street Settlement is having a job fair also on Friday, December 6th from 11 to 2. And then St. Nick's Alliance has ongoing information sessions. These are in Brooklyn, but we did want to make this resource available to you. It's on information on training programs for HVAC, building maintenance, construction, and environmental remediation. So the information is here, and I believe we'll also have it posted on our website as well. For community programming, we are happy to announce that we were able to reprint some of the community art from earlier in the program and place it along East Houston Street. We originally had this just green construction mesh, and it was getting pretty tagged up. So we were able to work with CDC and the contractor to have the community art placed up again. We were able to fit all of the art pieces along that stretch, and it is much more inviting when, that's Houston Street is the main entrance really to the park now. And it has just really brightened up the area. So we're very excited that we were able to put that up for that link there. And we did alert the artists as well that we would be, posting their art again. Just the other day, we had a site tour with some of the folks from the CAG. It was really great to show the construction progress, to be able to see the amphitheater. We talked about the irrigation. We had Elvis from our team who's been out there doing the plant installs. And it was just a really a nice time. The weather was beautiful. It was, before this rain system came in. So it was really nice. And again, we hope to do more site walks as as the construction progresses. So now to get into the construction portion of things, most of the items are relatively the same, especially from CB3. We've moved project area 2 to the end since that is substantially complete. So I think, the focus moving forward will be project area 1 and parallel conveyance. For project area 1, the upcoming ball field 7 and 8 closure we'll discuss in a little bit. We have quite a few photos of the tree plantings. The shrubs are going to be coming in the next week or so. The amphitheater is in progress, tennis courts, basketball courts. They're really moving along with the southern end of the park, so we're very excited about that. For parallel conveyance, we have ongoing utility relocations. We'll talk a little bit more about the work at Water Street. Again, test piles in the northern locations, and some Con Ed work as well. So to get a little bit deeper into the construction activities, here's an updated access map where we have ball field 1 and 2 open. Again, you'll see some photos of the amenities that are under construction. Up in area 4, by Montgomery Street. We still have the micropile installation and then the flood wall operations at Montgomery Street and South Street. At Houston Street, the ongoing retaining wall activities. And then as we move into East 10th Street, we have that utility work and deep sewer work happening. And you'll see a slide coming up that has an updated photo of the micro tunneling pit and the operations there at East 10th Street. All right, so to start the phasing update, and again, we did encourage you to watch the CB3 live stream. It's not always live stream, but we were fortunate that this time it was. But for those of you who may not have caught it, we will go through the slides because this is moving into a new section of the park. So the ESCR program is on schedule to finish by the end of 2026. But the continued transition into phase 2 is critical to the success of the schedule. The team is continuing to maintain at least 42% open space access as committed. And with the opening of ball fields 1 and 2, the open space has increased to about 49%. And here are some of the photos of the open areas. So in moving into a new piece of the park, we did keep the community priorities that we have been hearing in mind. So that was maintaining access to the waterfront via the Esplanade, maintaining walking paths and access to Stuyvesant Cove Park and upward, maintaining at least the 42% open space, keeping fields open during the park's permitted seasons, again, not to disrupt the permitted activities, limiting tree removals, and maintaining safe circulation. And if there are others, we could certainly add to that slide. So again, this is just kind of a summary of where we are with the 2026 scheduled completion, 42% open space commitment. We have continued to maintain the 42% or more since 2021. And we will continue to moving forward into winter 2024, 2025. Below are some of the kind of milestones that we've hit. I'm not going to go through them all. I think we've been along this journey together and everybody's aware of the openings that we've had. We've talked about it. But then in spring 2025, we are anticipating the opening of Corlears Hook Park, the Cherry Hill and Flagpole area, not the parts that's, PC has under construction, as well as the Corlears Hook Bridge and amenities south of the Williamsburg Bridge, which we will have more detail in the next coming CAG meetings. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, this is the proposed phasing update or the scheduled phasing update rather. So field 7 and 8 are scheduled to close December 2nd after the end of the permitted sports season. So we've been working very closely with parks to make sure that the permitted season can complete and then we can start doing work there. And again, this is to facilitate the deep sewer work. This is why we had to move into ball fields 3, 4, and 5. There is a deep sewer chamber right there. That's the blue box here in ball field 7 and 8. So this is kind of the next area that is critical to perform that deep sewer work. As mentioned, the Esplanade and access to Stuyvesant Cove Park will remain open. As you can see, the green space over here. The yellow arrows indicate the access to the track area. There will be a small area in the northwest corner of the track area that we will need to take, and there's a photo in the next slide that shows that because there is a sewer manhole there that is part of this work here. So we've again coordinated very closely with Park as to not disturb the activities in the track area, but to only take the kind of corner that covers that manhole so that way the contractor could do their work. The contractor is limiting the tree removals as to only what is needed within the red box. The trees in the open space area here and along the Esplanade, they will remain intact. The contractor was very specific with which trees he needed to remove to do the work. And again, keeping the 42% open space. So this is the manhole that the contractor will need access to. And this is the kind of fence line that the contractor will construct in order to gain access to that manhole. So we did coordinate with Parks, and that will be okay for the sprint area there. There is still room behind and around. And again, that will be kind of the proposed location for that fence in that area. Before we move on to kind of the rest, do we want to just pause here for a second if anyone does have questions on the phasing before we kind of jump into the construction photos? I think quite a few of you have seen this already and asked some questions, but happy to take it if there's any others.
Anybody have any? Oh,
Questions that aren't related to the phasing, so it's related to the amphitheater walkthrough.
Oh, okay. Can we take phasing first and then hit the amphitheater walkthrough, Michael? Is that okay?
Yeah,
uh, okay, Wendy, is your question phasing related?
Yeah, can we go back to number 19? And I'm really glad to hear the tree removals will be limited. Are the trees that are being removed marked? Are
I
they,
don't believe they're marked in the field. No.
and how are the trees that are remaining going to be protected? Are they outside a fence? Are they?
Yeah. So if any of the trees, just in general, again, I haven't seen, I can't say where exactly the trees are being removed, but in general, if trees are within a construction area and they're being protected, then they typically have the construction barrier, the wooden barrier, the tree guard around them. But if there are trees outside of the construction area, the fence protects them from the construction, like the ball field fence will be that delineator, and all the construction will be inside field 7 and 8. So most of the trees that are within the red area here will be removed so that the machinery can get around. But trees that are outside the construction area are just protected by way of that they're not within the construction area.
Thank you for explaining that. I had one other question about related to, as areas are being opened. One is the new bridge at Delancey, and it has specific hours, right? 7 to 5, I think it is. Are other parts of the park going to be open 24 hours, or are they going to be limited in some way?
Sure. So I
Do
think
you know
we
the
don't,
timing and
we
the
don't
different phases?
Yeah, we don't have those specifics right now. That'll be coordinated once I think largely it will depend on the utilities that we have available. Again, and if there's safe lighting provided throughout the open areas. So it'll be a safety discussion that we'll hold with Parks. And Luke, I know you're on, so if you have anything else to say, you certainly can. But I think it'll be, once we figure out what amenities will be opening when, it'll largely be a safety conversation about access and exit and entry. Is it safe when there's low light? And
Right.
so it'll be based on that.
And, people in the community have asked for police call boxes in the park. And they're wondering if there's any kind of a regular patrol. Will police come through? There's more parking now. Will police be coming in, or I don't know. What is the safety plan for the park? I guess is part of it. As it opens, is each section being considered separately? I'm thinking about like Pier 42. I don't even know if that's open all day, 24 hours. I haven't gone
Luke,
on at night.
would you want to speak to that? I,
Yeah, hey Wendy.
Thank you.
So for Pier
Hi.
42, right now it is there's no gate, so there's no mechanism to lock it. So it is effectively open. I think it's your point. We should probably have similar to the plans to have an operational discussion as to how are we going to maintain this once it opens, and also in the kind of phasing plan as it begins to open. We should have a similar conversation regarding enforcement. So at minimum, we have our Parks Enforcement Patrol is 100% notified that they need to add sites to their kind of regular rounds. And then right now, for example, our Parks Enforcement Patrol, they're the ones who are closing fields 1 and 2 at sunset. They're the ones who are actually doing that and escorting people out. But I think overall, if we have specific concerns that arise based off of like selectively closing areas, I think that we want to be, responsive to the needs of the community. So as it comes up, please let us know, and that'll be kind of our first step. But we will also look at being proactive about it as well.
Diane, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had asked this at CB3, but I thought I'd just bring it up again about the closure. So we're on the right slide. We had talked at CB3 about the plans for the football equipment lockers that are back there behind the closed area, whether or not the ecology centers sheds would need to move, and also whether or not the bathrooms, in specifically the ladies' room at the track and the 10th Street bathrooms would be remaining open.
I'm going to address that in reverse order. The woman's room behind the track house will remain, and that's actually the limit line for where their work will be. So you'll have access into the woman's room behind, and then everything kind of to the right of it on this map will be closed. For the Lessick storage shed, so there's kind of 2 storage yards that are in that area. You can kind of see it on the map, but basically where Lessick has their storage yard or shed, that one will not be impacted during this phase of the closure. And then we're also, I just talked with them earlier today, we're making sure that anything that is in the other yard, like there's some bluestone, that gets transported before we do the closure, and that it definitely doesn't get disposed of. Parks, just as a part of that, Parks is going to have to share that space with Lessick because we've been previously using the storage yard that's a little bit above it on this map for our needs. And then finally, sorry, what was that?
No, I just said yes.
And then just finally regarding the football equipment, so we intend to move the stuff, if the team doesn't want to take it, the stuff that's on field 7 and 8 that's loose. And I think the track is likely the best spot. I think there is a deeper conversation that is going to be had regarding the future of the shipping containers. Right now, there's no plan in the final design to have storage for their stuff. So there's some conversation as to what does that mean in the interim period? What does that mean long term? But there's no final answer on that. But I am flagging that it is pressing with the upcoming closures, because that area will be, not accessible from the public, and the intent is to move the shipping containers so that they can start working there. So we are working through that right now.
Okay. Just one last thing. I know that the Lions are still practicing on the track infield, or they were the other night, and playing. Is there an end to their season?
So top of my head, I know there's a season change on December 1st, which is why we went with the December 2nd date. It wouldn't impact things. But I'm not 100% if I imagine they're going to continue to practice into the winter season at some capacity, if not play full games. So I owe you an answer on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't see any other questions, so I guess we can move on to the construction photos.
But Michael had a question about the amphitheater
Oh,
center.
yeah, that's right. Sorry. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I can wait also if you want to continue. I can hold the question. It's up to you guys.
That's fine. You're off mic now. Might as well.
So two questions actually. First is regarding the amphitheater specifically, and that is something that we forgot to ask that has since come up. I noticed in the seating of the amphitheater, they were starting to put like these metal plates or whatever in like the gaps between the seating. Is that the skateboarding deterrent? And if it's not, is there any skateboarding deterrent planned for the seating area?
So I think what we saw in the field was not a permanent condition. I think that was the install for them to then put kind of the grouting in between the block. And then is there a permanent skateboarding deterrent? I I will have to go back and check on that, and we could check in the PDC submission as well to see if there is. I don't recall off the top of my head though. So we could go
Yeah,
ahead
if
and
you
look
could
at
get
that
back,
unless
yeah, if you could get back to
anyone
us
else
about
remembers anything.
that. Yeah, that would be great if you can get back to us about that, because we all know how the skateboarders love shiny new surfaces.
Yeah.
And then the other question is not really amphitheater related, but it's something we looked at while we were out there too, and that is the temporary shade structures that Luke had put in and asked us to look at. And I think the consensus, I will speak for myself, but I believe the consensus of most of the group was that we were not really satisfied with those. I do want to shout out the kudos to Luke for honoring his military days with the camouflage, but it looks more like netting than it does a actual shade surface. Like it's more open than a sort of solid shade fabric would do. And when we were out there, one of the dugouts was, even though that shade structure was up, it was completely in the sun. Like there was no shade being offered by that sail.
No, I appreciate the feedback, as a prototype. The only thing, just for everyone's awareness, because we did want to look, I mean, we did look at like a shade sail, like you've seen in other playgrounds. Those things go because they need to be structurally sound and they need to be able to hold up, snow, rain, anything that is not porous. It just is like a much bigger commitment. So even a small one, the last one we installed costed around $80,000 to $100,000. So we will look at other forms, but the idea of having this like kind of porous structure, although we could work on the coloration of it, was to just get something up that doesn't require additional beams or anything to put up. But if there are I want to take this feedback, and if there's a specific example of something that we could do that can just be attached to the existing dugout structure, that would be the ideal thing. And that's not to say that that precludes like additional work down the road for the more robust shade sail, but that was the logic. But I appreciate the feedback.
Sure thing.
Robin?
I can send you
Oh.
some links to stuff.
Hi, thanks for bringing that up, Michael and Luke. Yeah, we're looking for a commitment, so this $100 million park or whatever it costs, to add another $80,000-$90,000 doesn't seem like a lot, even though I know it's a lot to raise. I'm happy to send you photos and images, and I guess I don't know if I have your email, but if you stick it in the chat, I'm happy to send you examples of shade structures.
Yeah, I'll throw it in the chat, and I agree that the property deserves any additional penny that we can get. And sometimes, we're just trying to. I want to have some solution for you guys, but the better answer might be a more robust, expensive answer.
Right,
I'll
but
put my
there
email in the chat. Look forward to getting anything you can say.
There will be 8 fields or something when this park is finished, so it's only in 2 years from now. So that would be a vendor, a big, RFQ to a vendor who could supply those and install them in all of these fields, or maybe even citywide, since we're talking about shade and lack of shade. as a thought. Anyway, please share your email and I'll send you some examples.
All
All
right,
right,
I don't see
so-
any other questions.
Okay, perfect. So just a few construction photos for, again, those who weren't out on site the other day. These are some of the photos of the trees that are being planted that are already going into their kind of fall dormancy, some of the deciduous ones. As we mentioned, next week the shrubs are due to arrive, so a lot of this bare area here will be then covered in shrubs and other plants. These purple little things that look like drains are part of the irrigation system, which again, Elvis did a great job of explaining to us when we were out there. But you know, in a nutshell, the trees are getting sufficiently irrigated through a temporary system now, and then it will be a permanent system moving forward. These are some of the areas. The first picture is under the Williamsburg Bridge, which is really coming out lovely under there. That's the multi-use turf area, which is just north of the bridge, and then some plantings near the tennis court. This is the installation of the C-rail along the esplanade near the tennis step down. And then the photo to the right is actually in Corlier-Took Park, and that's some of the curb formwork that's happening there. At East 10th Street, the photo on the left is the pedestrian pathway. I think we had mentioned that the contractor is doing some temporary repaving of the sidewalk there as they shift out of the area closest to Avenue D and kind of move closer to the FDR Drive. So that's one of the temporary pathways that was just installed. And then the photo on the right is the East 10th Street micro tunneling launch pit, which is pretty impressive to see. And then we'll have, you know, more photos of that when it starts. So just for some updates, 240 trees have been planted of the 440 that will be on site, and the shrubs are beginning to arrive. Oh, yeah, and the shrubs are beginning to arrive next week. We just showed the photos of the East 10th Street ongoing improvements to the sidewalks and the detour areas. The micro tunneling is on track to begin early December. We are continuing to have discussions around the signage at East Houston Street, and we hope to have an update for you on that. If not at the next CAG meeting, then hopefully the one just after. And then again, the future amenity openings, that discussion is in progress, and as soon as we can present on that, we certainly will. So for the AQM reporting for project area 1, again, these are the locations of the 16 monitors. To report out the area from about Jackson Street to the Williamsburg Bridge, where we have a good amount of construction happening. Did have a couple of exceedances. The area from Montgomery Street to Jackson Street, since there hasn't been as much construction down there, and now that Pier 42 is finished, as you can see, this had significantly decreased. And then the areas also to the north of the Williamsburg Bridge have had, again, small numbers of kind of little spikes. And please note that some of them are from off-site activities, as well as some, again, from construction activities. For PC construction progress, at location 1, which is Jackson Street and Water Street, including Corlier-Took Park, we have the ongoing utility relocation. They've started the sewer installation at Gouverneur Slip East, which will require the daytime road closures, and Water Street has reopened to traffic. We have a couple of photos. We're also going to start the steam main abatement, and there will be some night work on the FDR Drive between Cherry Street and Jackson Street. At Lewis Street and Delancey Street, and many of the other locations where we're doing not as robust work. There is ongoing utility relocation test piles, and then also some Con Ed gas and steam work as well. Just for an update on the closures around Water Street. So there is a daytime closure of Gouverneur Slip East. So that means that the closure is only from Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So Water Street, it was a full closure and it didn't reopen at the end of the day. Gouverneur Slip East, it is only a daytime closure. And then there's also closures on Saturday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Again, this is to facilitate the deep sewer work. The traffic is restored at the end of each workday. The sidewalk on the east side of Gouverneur Slip East is closed and parking is limited on a portion of Water Street. And then the next phase, once Gouverneur Slip East is completed, will be Jackson Street, but we will give you an update when that is set to start. So there was a active steam pipe discovered near the work area. It's adjacent to the work on Gouverneur Slip East. And the asbestos casing on the steam pipe requires standard asbestos abatement procedures. So this is, if you recall, we've done this in other areas of the project, and that has or includes a licensed asbestos abatement contractor that will formulate the abatement plan and then execute the abatement. So it is a kind of a third party that comes in that is specialized in this activity and then performs this in accordance with all local, state, and federal guidelines, as well as safely containing and disposing of the material. So all of the materials containing asbestos will be isolated and contained in fully enclosed containment zone. And within the zones, the materials will be placed in sealed containers and bags and trucked offsite. And as we have reported in other cases like this, I think we had at around Gouverneur's Garden, this happened as well, that the public may see workers in Tyvek suits, and it is necessary for them because they are working on the asbestos abatement or asbestos containing pipes. So this personal protective equipment is mandatory for their work. And then as this work is happening, of course, if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we continually present to Vladeck and Gouverneur Gardens, and we'll continue to do so. So just a few photos. This is a Con Ed conduit installation at East 20th Street and gas main installation at Columbia Street. And then a Con Ed conduit installation near the FDR Drive and Corlears Park. And then Water Street reopened after the completion of the deep sewer work. Just quickly for PA2, it has reached substantial completion as we reported. Astor Levy Playground, Stuyvesant Cove Park, and Murphy Brothers Playground are all opened, except for the northern entrance of Stuyvesant Cove Park due to the Solar One construction. And that last week or the week before, we did have to close Murphy Brothers Playground down for about a week or a couple of days to continue or to facilitate the planting. So now Murphy Brothers Playground is planted. If you've been up to Astor Levy, the planting is doing really well there, and Stuyvesant Cove Park as well. So we look forward to the spring to see these plants kind of shoot up after being dormant for the winter. So we're very excited about that. And that is the last slide. So if there are any questions, we'd be happy to take those.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great. And then as always, you can submit questions to Paula and Tara, and we will, turn them around as quickly as possible. I know we have a couple that just came in that we're working on, and with parks as well. And then we responded to the shade and irrigation letter. Paula, we said that yesterday or today.
Yeah, I shared it with them.
Perfect.
Oh, Wendy has a question.
Hi, thanks. It's very exciting to see some of this. And that image going down at 10th Street. It looks like an MC Escher painting. It's really quite a scene with all the layers of ladders and people at work. But I'm so glad we have rain today, and I know there's irrigation on the new trees. Is this Murphy Brothers Playground? Does it have irrigation?
I believe PA2 does not have an irrigation system like East River Park does. I think this, and Luke, if you need to correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe this is watered through hand watering with the kind of, there's like water valves throughout the park. But Luke, I don't know if you could speak to that, but I believe there is not irrigation in project area 2.
Everything you just said is correct to my understanding.
So thank you. I hope there's a stewardship group up there because it could be pretty dry, but I wish the plants well, and it's nice to see them coming in, and that it's going to be exciting to see things pop up. You're right. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think our next CAG is on December 19th, correct? Yeah, right before the holidays. Great.
All right. Well, thanks, you guys.
Have a nice
And
holiday.
Thank you. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving.
thanks, Desiree. You too. All right,
Thank
folks.
you.
Let's reconvene in 2 minutes for the CAG only conversation. So, reconvene at 4:47. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. How was the site visit yesterday?
What was that?
How was the site visit on Tuesday?
The site visit was, can you hear me
Mhm.
by any
Yeah.
chance? Okay.
The site visit was interesting. It was great to actually see in person and get a sense of what it's going to look like physically, even though we've seen the renderings. It was hard to determine how much of the space would be green space because while concrete has been poured, there are spaces that are just mud. And we were told that they are going to be grass covered and that the level was going to raise tremendously so that they would be high and slant down in the direction of the stage. So people would be able to lay blankets on them, but that part was a little hard to visualize. But, you know, I mean, if we're just looking at seating and pathways and stage, that's what it is, and it looks fine. There was some questions about why more of the pathway was not permeable.
Why more of the what? I think there, do you have background noise, Io? Because it's everyone
I'm
but
in an
you is on
emergency.
mute.
I am in an emergency room. Maybe I
Got it.
should just not speak and let somebody else speak right now. Yeah, Michael was there, I think. There's someone here that was there other than me, so maybe they should
Robin.
speak.
Yeah.
I was there. Yeah, I mean, I first of all, the power is installed, so I was excited about that. But they installed power as if huge sound companies are coming in with their, you know, with their Taylor Swifts. But I didn't see the outlets, but he assured me that they were there for the regular people who are going to be using the amphitheater to just bring in their extension cords. The one thing that I found that it wasn't clear, like Maya was saying, is really sort of how anyone just who might have difficulty walking is really going to get into the seating. So we'll have to see what it looks like. That was my biggest question, and they assured us that you could enter from the top, but it looks like everything is directed in one ramp all the way down. But I think there's an opening, right, Michael? But it didn't seem very clear. But
Yeah, so basically the way that the access to the seating area is that the way the flow into the amphitheater is if you're coming off the Corlears Hook Bridge, if you go along the right side of the seating, there will be openings at each area where there's seating. So you can go in that way on the right side. But if you go down the left side, there are no openings on the left side. If you go down the left side of the seating, you would have to walk all the way down to where the stage is and then walk back up to where the seating openings are on the right side.
Anyone else
and the other thing
want
also
to
is
share anything about the site visit on Tuesday?
I'm sorry, you broke up. I didn't hear the first half of what you said, Paula.
Or just if anyone else wanted to reflect or share anything from the site visit.
I think that's it. Who was there? There was someone else there from Wendy. The other thing is there's an awful lot of concrete. There's an awful lot of concrete, and hopefully all the green that they say. And I know the concrete's part of the design because I think they were thinking from the Delancey Bridge and the Corlears Hook Bridge, we're multiple use, pedestrians, bikes. I don't know what the other use is, but hopefully that you know, it won't look as cementy when it's all finished. But the seating seemed, we sat in the seats, you know, they're pretty comfortable.
Yeah. And if people haven't seen them, I sent some pictures out earlier this morning. While we were waiting for people to arrive, Elvis did give us a sort of a really, as Desiree mentioned a couple of times, thorough demonstration of the irrigation system. So the first two pictures are of that irrigation system, of those sort of plastic tubes that are surrounding each of the trees. One of the questions that I asked about the irrigation system was how it's set up so that if a pipe does break underground, does that mean the whole irrigation system is gone then? But he said that the system is set up as in zones. So if a pipe does break in a certain zone, it will only affect that zone and not the whole area of the system. Right now, because the park maintenance building that is going to be installed sort of right across from where Grand Street ends, is not there yet. That is deemed to be sort of the dedicated water source for the irrigation system. So right now, the water source is coming from fire hydrants.
And along with that, I did ask all the green that they're putting. So if you're talking about like a spiral, right, you're spiraling into the seeding, that's all going to be real green and not anything artificial, which will be great. The other one last thing is I mean, in hindsight, of course, we see these things when they're real, but I wish we had pushed for a larger stage. And it seems to have a couple of like, it doesn't seem perfectly oval or circular. There seems to be kind of like the baseball field that they built, little indentations. So I'm hoping it's not going to be disruptive for people, but that's it really.
Isn't the amphitheater supposed to get a cover? And maybe that's where those pieces, it's kind of ends.
Yes, it's supposed to get a cover, and it's supposed to be a
Yeah.
flat and not a tiled surface.
The thing I worried about it is it backs so up right up to the path along the esplanade. So there's no backstage, it's just the esplanade. So that will be different for people used to kind of getting staged along the back and side.
I think they were I asked about that, and I think there was talk of building some kind of having a structure that was supposed to be for that or for materials, and also, it's a skateboarders paradise. So, the whole area around the amphitheater. So, the back, yeah, it's not as wide from the river, but you're also so much higher from the river than you were before that, it's kind of like it's very far away, the river.
It's a different experience. For sure. Interesting.
You should find about the maintenance of the watering system. The one that was supposed to be or wasn't supposed to be put into Stuyvesant Cove. They said, oh, well, the rats eat into it anyway. And the maintenance, it's very hard to keep up the maintenance, so they generally don't work.
The irrigation system or these plastic,
The irrigation system.
yeah, there are these
Yeah,
plastic tubes that go in the ground. It's a very complicated, I mean, yeah, everything is
Yeah,
plastic.
and the park says they can't maintain it.
Marty, that's not exactly the case. We don't have an irrigation system in Sky Cove.
Yeah, I know.
What we
For
have
that
are
reason.
what we have are ground
Yeah.
hydrants, and the ground hydrants are too far below grade, which means they fill with silt and water, which makes it extremely difficult to turn them on and off. That's the issue with water in the park right now.
I know this may sound silly, but I don't know how soon rats are going to be coming to this park,
Well, we already have rats in Sky Cove, so I
You
wouldn't
already-
expect that it takes
All
doesn't
right,
take
well,
long at all. Yeah.
Great, okay.
It's a waterfront park.
I do want to add, I think it's great that we have an amphitheater, that they're actually putting one in, and that they actually agreed to put in power, which for a person who presents work out of doors, and for all those community people, that we're at least making a headway in not constantly bringing in gas generated, power sources. And I think that, hopefully we'll start a trend in parks amphitheater building, that they put in power for everybody.
Yes, for power in Stuyvesant Cove Park, which we didn't get for our concerts. We had we hired a tech who had his own generator that he brought in for the concerts.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't push for that up there, but I pushed for it down here, and the same, because the same as having shade on ball fields and the same as having power, like to skip all those steps that we've been doing for years, which is lugging equipment in and putting up plastic tarps and things like that. But anyway, yeah, it was a good visit. Would you say, Michael?
We had also called for call boxes. This was 2 years before the construction started.
Martin, that's
We
exactly
didn't
why
get,
I brought it up today. So early on in the discussion about phasing, they could hear it again that we wanted to. I think it's important.
especially since the 12-foot walls that make it impossible for anybody on Avenue C to see what's happening in the park. Didn't get it.
Yeah, that was one of the other things I think that we noticed yesterday too, was that, or Tuesday, was the view is very different. As Robin mentioned, it's, not only are we higher from the river, but even when you're out on the Esplanade looking towards the city, it's a very different view of things that you used to be able to see that you don't see anymore.
Something that I also noticed, because I've done a lot of, I live right near Boylfields 1 and 2, and I've spent a lot of time there. It's much noisier for some reason, the traffic. And I know that there are no trees absorbing that, but the traffic sound is noticeably a lot louder, and it feels almost like we're closer to the traffic somehow. So the pathway, I know the pathway used to be along, the pathway used to be along the fence, but I don't know if because we're higher up the elevation, but it's very loud. And I asked about the shrubbery that's going along the pathway from Corlears Bridge up north along Ballfields 1 and 2. They're gonna, I think someone from, I think they were gonna, they have all these plantings, but I asked about that because we need to mask that sound. Like suddenly it sounds like it's like a speedway. And I never noticed that in that park before. You hear droning traffic, but it was very loud.
Michael, I have a question about the irrigation. So is the whole system that Elvis explained, is it entirely an irrigation system? There are no manual water sources in East River Park? Or did you guys talk about that?
We did not ask that specifically, so
Okay.
I can't answer. I wouldn't be able to answer that with confidence.
Okay.
So now might be a good time to transition. Michael, do you want to introduce the guests that we have today from Lesby?
Sure. Lesby and Friends of Corlears Hook Park have been sort of working together on a lot of different things around park preservation and around some of the buildings that were already torn down and saving some of the history of those buildings. And most recently, we've been communicating around the archaeological project that occurred in Corlears and the artifacts that were found through that project, and working with the city to try to come up with some sort of way that those artifacts can be, see the light of day and be used as educational tools in New York City schools as well as community events. So they are here to talk to us not only about that, but also about the latest news regarding the fire boathouse. So I will turn it over. I don't know if Richard or Deborah, which one of you is presenting, but I will turn it over to you guys, and you guys can probably do a much better introduction than I did.
Oh, well, thank you, Michael. And I'll take over, but I want to introduce myself first. Yeah, Richard Moses with the Lower East Side Preservation Initiative. I'm the president of LESB. I'm here with Deborah Y, who's our LESB vice president. So thank you all for having us here tonight. We're really looking forward to talking to you about these subjects. Thank you, Michael, also for putting this together for us. I think all of you probably know at this point that the archaeological dig in Corlears Hook Park was very extensive, and they actually came up with about 100,000 artifacts during the dig, which is really one of the very significant finds, certainly for the Lower East Side. I would say probably, for all of New York. And so, they also found many features, which are mostly architectural features in the park during the dig. They found foundations, cisterns, and steps, things like that. And those are also very significant in tracing the history of the site and the way New Yorkers lived their lives in Lower Manhattan at that time. We very much wanted these architectural features to be shown in the park, and that has actually been done before in other sites where they'll put plexiglass, say, over an old foundation wall so that people can still walk easily on the site. And then if they look down on the plexiglass, they'll see the foundations or the cisterns or whatever. And that's been successful in other places, but the city said, no, it's too difficult, too many problems. So we feel that the least that the city can do at this point is to show at least a few representative artifacts of the 100,000 artifacts that they came up with in the park. So when people are in the park, they can get a sense as to just how important this archaeological dig was. And what we're thinking is that, let me share the screen if that's okay. We have a little slideshow. It's very short, so don't worry. Let's see here. Can you see that now?
Yep.
Okay, good. So
Yeah.
what you can see here at the bottom, some of the examples of the archaeological finds within the park. And then at the top, you'll see the comfort station, which probably many or most of you are familiar with. Whoops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, most of you are familiar with. And what we'd like to do is take the windows at either end of the park, at the left side of the plan or the right side of the plan. The left side you'll see is the photo on the left of the plan. And take those windows and make them into displays. And we don't think that that's a complicated thing to do. It would be just actually like putting some shelving behind the glass, making sure that the glass is non-reflective and is highly secure. So when people approach the building, they can check this out. And the Parks Department has not shown great enthusiasm about this. We've been talking to them about, at least preliminarily, but they may have a little bit of interest if they feel they can do it. For some reason, it just seems that Parks has a lot on their plate, and they're concerned about adding extra stuff, whether it's for budgetary reasons or just for complexity reasons. But I think because of the importance of this dig, it's worth making the extra effort. Now, in Washington Square Park, I don't know if you guys have seen the new building within the park, but when they were building this new building, they came across a headstone from the 18th century, and so what they decided to do was, rather than store it away in some storage archaeological storage bin somewhere, that they would mount it behind a window, which is what you see here, and people can actually see it and read about the history. So we wanted to do that same technique in Corlears Hook Park. So that's that's the first issue we wanted to talk about. The second issue is the East River Parks Track House and Tennis Center Comfort Station. You all probably know those buildings. We had gotten them listed as eligible for the state and national register for historic places a couple of years ago, and with the hopes that they could be reused, moved, or somehow adapted to the new park. And we had spoken to engineers. I'm an architect myself, and we felt it was very doable. But the city really wasn't interested in doing it. And so because they're listed as eligible for the state national register for historic places, the city is supposed to have some kind of mitigation if they're going to demolish the building. Well, the mitigation ended up to be they're just going to take some pictures of it and then tear it down. So we felt that that was really beyond the pale. And we've been working with the Parks Department to try to display some representative pieces of the terracotta ornament on the buildings within the new track house. And this terracotta ornament is very special, particularly because it was designed and crafted so that to reflect the site's maritime history. Before it was a park, the site or the area adjacent to the park was wharfs, with shipbuilding areas, and this ornament reflects that. You can see these kind of sea creatures on the left, and then on the ornament of the women's room, and the close up there is actually a rope and shackle design that reflects some kind of ship, kind of equipment that's used on a ship. So we feel that this is very important for understanding the park's history, and also it has great aesthetic value. So we've been working with the Parks Department to try to display the representative samples of this terracotta in the entry hall. So if you look at this is a plan of the new track house, not the existing track house, but the new track house. In the middle is the hallway, which will be used by the public. And what we want to do is mount the terracotta actually as flush with the wall as possible, above the doors, above this window in the staffing area, a staff office. You can see there's a little window. And so that would be a nice way to display the terracotta units. Unfortunately, the park says there's no money available for this, that Lesby can try to go ahead and raise money for this, which we're very willing to do, but we're not sure we can do, because we're probably looking at the end of the day from $30,000 to $50,000. But with the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project costing several $billions, we don't understand why, when these two historic buildings are being demolished, that there can't be more of a mitigation than just taking some pictures, that a little bit of money can just be put behind it. So that's where we are. We would love to see the city put its money behind it, rather than us having to go out and try to raise the money, as we're just a small, all volunteer organization. And it is challenging for us, and we're willing to take on this challenge, but anything that the city can do to help us would be greatly appreciated.
Richard, let me add just one thing.
Yeah.
We had suggested, if the artifacts from Corlears Hook Park couldn't be shown in Corlears Hook Park, perhaps there'd be room in this area, display area, for some of the artifacts. But the Parks Department thinks that there's just not enough room. And they have come up with a preliminary layout for a possible display, which they plan to send to us. But there won't be room for the Corlears Hook artifacts, unfortunately.
Right, although we'd still like to continue pushing for it, because we do think it would be very viable to put vitrines that are set into the wall. They probably need to only be about 1 foot or so deep, set into the walls below the terracotta, maybe at like waist height. So, or starting at waist height and going a little bit higher, so people could see them walking in. And you could, if you look at the public changing rooms, you can see that there are walls there that could have a little bit of space taken out of them, maybe 6-8 inches, something like that, without causing a lot of disruption to the layout of the building. Same thing with the staff office. So we'd like to keep pushing for it, but we're not getting really a great positive response at this point. We did meet with them last week, on these issues, and our conversations are still going, but we could use all the support that we can get. Then finally, the Fireboat House, because the two other historic buildings, the track house and the tennis center, are being demolished. This was to be the last surviving historic building to be left in the new park. And it dates from the late 1930s. It's listed as eligible for the National and State Register of Historic Places. And now the city was initially planning to restore it and refit it so that it could be, I won't say flood proof, but able to deal with floods, that flood waters could kind of flow through it if it came to that, and then flow out of it again, and retrofit it that way, and that was in the budget. But now the city is saying, because there's so much structural deterioration of the building, that it's no longer possible to restore it and reuse it, that it would be too expensive, too difficult. And the main problem they're saying is that the pilings that support the building, that extend down into not exactly the East River, although some of the East River water does travel in there, but go down into the soil, that they're too rotted out to use anymore. And they provided an initial report over the summer, which we had our engineers look at, and our engineers, and I have to say myself as well, had a lot of questions. I mean, some of the photographs that they showed were really not convincing as significant deterioration. They showed these little minor cracks on the inside of the building. It didn't look structural at all, and that the pilings, we weren't convinced were so far gone that the building lacked adequate support. We didn't see any evidence of failure. We did ask to have access to the site, including the engineers that we talked to, who are all established engineers who worked with the city before, but we were denied access to the site. We also suggested maybe doing some load testing, where you put some loads on the building and see if there's some displacement, see if the building is shifting because you've added this weight to it, and then you could say, yeah, these pilings really are failing, and it's no good. The building has to come down, but that was never followed up on by the city either. And then finally, the city recently came up with a report outlining alternatives, all the alternatives that could possibly be available to demolition, including moving the building, and doing some structural repairs and so on. They knocked each of these down primarily due to budget concerns. And since they knocked them down because they're allegedly too expensive, we would like to see more detailed cost breakdowns to see exactly, how much it's going to cost to do what, and have our people look at it and see if this is reasonable. Because sometimes if a client wants to demolish a building, you can always find a reason to demolish a building if you really want to. And we just want to make sure that this building really is in the condition that it needs to be demolished, that it's really not feasible to restore it. So we are reasonable people. We're not pie in the sky preservationists. We consider ourselves practical preservationists. So we wouldn't ever say, oh, there's no way this building could ever come down. It would be the biggest catastrophe since the Penn Station, but we do want to see that reasonable means are being taken to preserve the last remaining historic building in the park. The only tie back to the site's historic maritime use and to its construction as a WPA era park. So I do want to note that the State Historic Preservation Office chimed in. They chimed in because it is national and state eligible, and because federal funds are being used and state funds are being used for the work on the new park. But they came up with the idea to move the building onto a new pier. So we would be very happy to see that, of course, if it can't be restored in site on its existing site. And so that's another reason why we want to see these cost breakdowns. So what we would hope would be that maybe the community advisory group could support us on some of these issues and see if we can get the display done at Corlears Hook Park, ideally, which would be better than at the track house as far as we're concerned. But if it's not possible at Corlears Hook Park, then do it at the new track house. And also to see that the city is really doing due diligence on the condition of the fireboat house before this building is taken down. So, Deborah, was there anything that I missed or that you want to add?
I think, I feel like the excavation in Corliss Hook Park was just so significant, and yielded so many artifacts and probably cost so much money to do the dig and then do the conservation work and the analysis and the cataloging, that there should be some budget to be able to display some of these objects for the people who use the park all the time so they can realize what was going on right beneath their feet. So it seems very important.
Does anybody have any questions or remarks?
Robin?
Hi. Doesn't the parks have a monument department, right? Doesn't the Parks Department have a department? Have you been in touch with them? I've forgotten the exact name. I can look it up.
We have been talking to Jonathan Kuhn there. Isn't he with the monuments, Deborah?
Yeah, arts and antiquities in the
Yes.
parks. Yeah, yeah. He's part of the group that we talked to.
I see.
Yeah.
And I don't know about your fundraising, but I know the Mellon Foundation is now focusing on this kind of stuff, on heritage, cultural preservation.
Oh, that's
Um,
great to know. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm happy to talk to you. I'll get your info from Michael.
Thank
great.
you.
Wendy?
That made me wonder, but if you've been in touch with any of the local museums or American Indian Museum, for example, for any help or ideas on fundraising.
Yeah.
No, we haven't really gotten to that point yet. In that before we fundraise, we need a real plan. And since Parks has its own architects, we had asked that their team put together like a preliminary design, which I think they kind of put something together. They're supposed to forward to us.
Cool.
But and also a budget estimate, and a breakdown, so that the funders can see really how much money we need and that there's been thought behind it. But once we get that, yeah, we're gonna shop this thing around. Thank you.
There are only a few Native American artifacts. I think maybe 4 to 6, something like that, of the whole dig.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions for Richard and Deborah?
Thanks for your hard work on this. It's so interesting. And it's, an important part of the community's heritage that could be featured in the park. I know I just saw that the sea lions are back. The seals are back. Harbor seals are back in the Pier 42 now, the turtles.
I hadn't heard that.
But this would be so inspiring, I think, for people. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for your time.
I'm very sorry. Can you guys hear me? And I'm really sorry about the noise, but I don't have any other option for speaking.
Yeah, go ahead, Aya.
You sound clear.
Yeah, great. So a couple of things. Yeah, thank you for the information. I would love to know where the artifacts are and just see the report on the artifacts. I would love to know whether or not any remains or bone fragments were found. And I would also, I do think that it's important to document history lost, but as important as whatever has been discovered and whatever archaeologists have determined it reflects about life at that time. I would very much like to note the origin of the Dutch in early New York and the massacre that occurred at Corlear's Hook that killed over 40 um, Native Americans and remove them forcibly, others from that land. So I think, I know that you're only talking about the artifacts that have been found, but I think it's just as important to, and I don't want to repeat myself, I just want to emphasize the early history. That doesn't require an artifact from any period of time. And the period of time that the artifacts, it sounds like that you're talking about, were from the most notorious part of the history of Corlear's Hook. People did what they did and they lived how they lived, but it doesn't sound like the most, it was not, in fact, uh, a very proud time of our history in New York. So those are my opinions, but most importantly, I support 100% and do not agree because somebody has said it's not in the budget, that it cannot be in the budget. That is BS. But I would want it to include the early history, including the massacre that occurred, I think, in 1643. Anyway, that's all I have to say, and I'm going to take myself off of the mic so that you don't hear a lot of stuff in the background. But I'd love to hear your response.
Yeah, thank you very much. There is signage planned for Corlear's Hook Park that's going to outline the history of the park. And we would like to see that obviously included as well. That's very, very important. The whole experience of Native Americans in the area prior to the Europeans coming is really is critical, and then the interaction between the two as well. So thank you for bringing that up.
And
Hey,
there are,
Richard.
yeah.
Richard, you're doing some great stuff. It's been a long time since you've been with CB6.
Hi, Marty.
Uh,
It's been a long time since I've been
you
here.
wouldn't recognize the place anymore. I'm about the only one who's still there from when you were there.
Wow. Oh boy.
Have you
I
tried going
can't
to
imagine.
CB? Have you tried going to CB3 to be put on their budget requests?
Nope, but we can certainly do that.
Go to their parks committee. Try
Yeah.
to get on the agenda there and show them what you're doing. It's really terrific, and maybe you can get some budget priority monies out of them.
Absolutely. We have to keep pushing the parks to get their architectural team, to come up with something, because it's not really something that we're set up to do right now. We don't want to come up with something and ask an architect to put in a lot of time, and then it's nothing near what they would ever authorize. So we need their team to come up with it, even just preliminary designs. We don't even need a total design, just a schematic with a budget. And then we could shop it around, as I mentioned before, including to CB3. That's thank you for bringing that up.
That's how we got Stuyvesant Cove Park. We started in the Parks Committee
Mhm.
and started the fundraising via that. We got iced tea money and all the different electeds put in bits and pieces. We got what, $8 million out of it eventually, and then hired the design group.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. That was really a phenomenal achievement. And we're just asking for pennies compared to that, really. So
I wanted to mention one more thing that the
And
city's
I'm
doing.
sorry, I do have one more thing to say. And that one more thing. May I say one more thing?
Yes, of
Go ahead,
course.
Io? Did we lose you, Io? Yeah, oh wait,
Yeah, I think we lost her. She just dropped off.
yeah, yeah.
I had wanted to respond to something she said, because one of the things, the good things that are being planned is an education program for public schools that will deal with some of the topics, like the massacre and Native Americans, immigrant history, things like that. So there are some good things wrapped in here. But we also had hoped, when they did a curriculum in the schools, that they'd also be able to bring some of the artifacts so the students could actually experience the actual objects, some of the objects that were found.
Yeah, and Paula, I had previously sent
So may
to
I say one
you
more
guys.
thing?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Io.
Go ahead, Io.
Okay, thank you. I don't know. So the curriculum is great, but you should just know that the history of the New York City Department of Education does not actually do all that it's required. So whether we are talking about the rainbow curriculum, which I was very instrumental in the mid 90s, or we're talking about African American history or Jewish history, while it might be required, it doesn't usually end up in the classroom. And if it does, it's not overall, and it's not for a long period of time. It's not sustained. And that's a bad thing, but it is just the reality. But whatever effort can be used, whether it's overall or not, or it's long-term or not, that occurs, that's all good because it educates someone, right? I do feel that the Sky Cove Park thing took years and years and years. We don't have, I think, years and years and years to require this project to include this history in some kind of visual or other way. But I do think that it should be required, and I'm happy to join an effort that is persistently talking to and talking to is a mild phrase, insisting, demanding, and requiring that the artifacts be featured in some way and budgeted to be featured in some way in this project. I don't think it's too late for that. And I do think that the COG should sign on and support it, as long as it includes history of a variety of
Wendy?
I'm glad you brought that up, Io. You know, when I first heard about the ferry coming to Corlears, I started writing everybody I knew at the city who was working with the ferries or anything like that to say, could we co-name it Lenape Landing? Because that was a canoe landing area for Lenape people. And I wrote probably 8 or 9 letters. I called people I knew. I kept getting passed around. They responded to me the day before the dedication and said I should have had a Lenape person make that request. So I want to say that I don't know if anybody here is connected with the American Indian Community Center or anything like that, but that gives extra meaning and weight to any request involving, you know, the First Nations people. So I think, I don't know. I haven't done that. I didn't do any other follow-up on that, but there
Well,
is
I
a
think,
marker in the park, right? And there's also a marker on the website, the Parks Department website, related to that history.
yeah, I think as was said earlier, the challenge here is that the artifacts are not necessarily Native American artifacts. And Paula, I just sent you something that you can feel free to share with the rest of the CAG that is one of the last updates that we and Lesby and the rest of the consulting parties, as we're called, received, which was just pictures of some of the artifacts and some of the archaeologists working on those artifacts. And there is another document that was previously shared with the CAG, I think like 6 or 8 months ago, regarding the archaeology of the Corlears project. So I don't know, Paula, if you still have that, you feel free to send that out again. If you need it, I can send it to you again. For those that are interested in reading up more about this. But I guess the question, Richard, from my perspective, and part of the reason you know, I wanted you to do this to the rest of the CAG is, what do you want from us? Like we obviously don't have money to give you, but we can do a letter of support for these efforts if that's something that you think is helpful, or you know, as you work to continue doing you know, the advocacy for this.
A letter of support would be wonderful. You know, I'd like to follow up with you a little bit more on this to get into more specifics. But you know, what comes to mind is something to the Parks Department and something to OMB, and CCing, you know, the SHPO on this, the State Historic Preservation Office. So that's what immediately comes to mind. Maybe CCing DDC too, if you know, I don't know how much, but certainly the, you know, Parks and OMB, that would be great. So yep, a letter would be wonderful.
I mean, I think that Paul, I don't know what the process is here, but I'm happy to continue to work with Richard and Deborah on drafting something that we can share with the rest of the CAG like we normally do, if that's what you want to do.
That would be great. Thank you for volunteering to do that, Michael.
No problem.
Hey,
And
it's Robin.
Go ahead, Robin.
No, go ahead, Michael.
No, I think he was calling on you, Robin, but then it's Christine's turn.
I'm sorry, I'm in my car and I had I don't know if you knew it was me. I think, you know, in all this is coming up, I think we should think about doing land acknowledgements when the park opens and bringing in the indigenous community. I'm working with an indigenous artist now who lives in the neighborhood, to really sort of draw attention to that. It happens in many places now. And maybe we should think about that when you know, when the Corlears area opens, and we should think about doing something over there, as some kind of a real ceremony, not just a typical parks ribbon cutting. I'm happy to work with anyone on that.
That's a great idea.
There is someone on the distribution, Jeffrey C. Bendremer, who's a tribal historic preservation officer of the Stockbridge Muncie community. So he is part of the people who get this information, and he comments on it too.
Okay.
So where are we on this?
So right now we are basically I'm going to work with Richard and Deborah offline on creating some sort of letter of support from the CAG, and we'll present that to the CAG. I don't know if we'll have it done by December, so it might be January. And then once we agree to sign off on that, we'll distribute it to the government parties that it needs to be distributed to, I think is where we are.
It might actually be more forceful if it comes in January than when everyone is thinking about, you know, holiday shopping and stuff like that. Not everybody thinking about it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And where can I get information about both the artifacts and their analysis of them?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, there was stuff that was sent out like 6 or 8 months ago to the CAG. So Paula, I believe, is going to see if she still has it and resend it. If not, I can resend it to you, Paula. And then I also just sent another document to Paula that is mainly just pictures. It's not really any narrative, that can also be sent out. So you'll probably get that shortly.
That's good, but the question is more, where are the artifacts? Who has control of them? And what report
Okay.
had archaeologists or anthropologists determined? Do you
I
know what I
didn't hear the
mean?
second part of, I didn't hear the second part of that, but to answer the
So
first part,
usually when artifacts or remains are found in some kind of construction or dig or whatever it might be, archaeologists or anthropologists are assigned, paid and assigned to take a look at them and to determine, you know, what they were used for.
yeah,
What about the people, who use those things, whether or not there were remains, so on and so forth. There's a report somewhere, I'm hoping, that I would,
that's the report that I mentioned already that was sent about 8 months ago that Paula is
okay,
going to send.
okay. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
I'm signing off because I'm going to see what's happening here. All right, thank you so much, Phil, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Io.
Bye.
All right, so I guess, so Richard and Deborah, let's touch base, I guess, after Thanksgiving, and we'll get to work.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, everyone have a nice Thanksgiving.
Thank you all.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming tonight.
Hey,
Thank you.
thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything
So
else we need to cover?
that's what I was just about to say. Is there anything else we want to talk about? All right. Well, have a good holiday. Hopefully you guys can get some rest and eat some good food next week. And you know where to reach me. I'll send out those documents. I may not be able to do that tonight, but I'll do it tomorrow.
And
and
should I just email you the other one just so you don't have to find
that
it?
you can probably find it quicker than I can. So yeah, please do
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
I'll do that right now.
The next meeting is the 19th.
Yes.
And Paula, thank you again for arranging the site visit of the
Yeah, I'm
amphitheater.
so bummed I wasn't able to go, but I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Okay. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye,
Have a happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.